Chapter 24. I looked around. The parking lot only had a few cars. I guessed there wasn't a second shift. Sarah had parked a little away from the main door, next to one of the company vans. It gave us cover from any cameras pointing at the parking lot. I closed the hood and grabbed the bag from the front seat. "Wait a minute," I said. I got my phone out and dialed Alex. "Hello?" he said. "Are you still ready?" I asked. "Yes," he said. I looked at Sarah and said, "Go ahead of me. Do what you would normally do. I will follow in 90 seconds. I told Alex, "Wait 90 seconds and reboot the system." Sarah walked to the main doors and went inside. I counted down the time in my head as I watched her. I saw her speak briefly with the security guards and then walk past them. When I counted to 90, I stepped out of the shadow of the van and approached the building. I walked inside and up to the desk where the two security officers were sitting. I pleasantly said, "Hi, I have an appointment to see Mr. Parker." Both men briefly glanced down at their computer screens. When they looked back up, I had my gun out and was pointing it at them. I said, very slowly, "Pull out your guns and set them on the counter. If your fingers go anywhere near the trigger, you will lose them." Both men hesitated, and I said, "I have very little time. I will shoot you if that speeds things along." Both men took out their guns and set them in front of me. I saw a garbage can near the end of the counter, so I dropped them both in the trash. I then pulled out a couple of the large zip ties and told the man on the left to sit down and told the man on the right to zip tie his hands behind his back, tight. Once he did that, I tore off 2 pieces of duct tape and told him to place the tape over the 2 cameras behind the security desk. He had to stand on a chair, but he managed. I figured once the cameras came back online, that would confuse the man in the camera room, at least temporarily. I instructed the man to sit on the other chair, and I zip-tied his arms behind his back. I then zip-tied their legs to the chairs and put duct tape over their mouths. I pushed the chairs forward so that, at least from a distance, they would look like they were on duty. I headed to the stairs on the north end of the building and climbed to the 3rd floor. I cracked the door open and saw the room I was looking for. Unfortunately, 2 armed guards were standing at the door. I closed the door and thought for a moment. I reopened the door and walked through. The guards immediately pulled their guns and pointed them at me. I continued to walk toward them and said, "I'm so glad I found you. I was working late on the 2nd floor and a crazy man showed up with a gun." I continued to advance and said, "He insisted on seeing Parker." I told him he was on the 4th floor. When I got close enough, I kicked straight up and hit the hand of the guard on the right. His gun flew out of his hand and hit the ceiling before dropping to the floor. I immediately swung my right arm to the left and hit the second guard's wrist with my forearm, causing him to drop the gun. I kicked the first guy in the solar plexus and elbowed the second guy hard on the side of the head just above his ear. He went down, but the first guy was trying to straighten up. I stepped toward him, put my hand on his head, and shoved it against the wall. He went down too. I figured they would be out for a bit, so I didn't bother tying them up. I then picked up their guns and tucked them into my waistband, behind me and out of sight. I took my gun out and opened the door. Parker was standing in front of me and to the left. The guy who knocked me out in Annie's apartment was beside him, pointing a gun at me. Straight ahead, I saw Annie lying on a machine like the one my father used to scan my brain. Gabby was next to her with a gun against her head. To my right was Sarah. Behind her and to her left was one of Parker's guards with a gun pointed at her back. Parker took a step forward and said, "Welcome, Alex. We've been expecting you." "John," I said. "The name's John." "Forgive me, John," he said. "Now, please drop the gun before someone gets hurt." "I would suggest that you tell your people to drop their guns, or that someone will be you," I said. "I'm not afraid of dying," Parker said. "Are you?" "I suspect you'll live on as a general." "I didn't give you enough credit. You are smarter than I thought and way more of a pain in the ass. I knew you had no morals, but screwing over your partner like that is lower than low. Well, you know, plans change. I might as well tell you because you won't repeat it. The original plan was to replace members of Congress who would rather spend money on social programs than on keeping this country safe. I assume keeping this country safe involves a lot of Parker Biosystems contracts. Of course, Parker said, but that was nothing compared to the real prize. The presidency, I said. Rafferty changed his mind and decided against the idea. He liked the guy. Now he's for it. Tonight, he will convince the president that preserving his memories would greatly benefit the country and his legacy. I'm afraid I can't let you do that. Parker laughed and said, Put the gun down. I won't ask again. I did have plans for these two lovely ladies here, but if I must kill one of them, I will. I knew killing Annie or Sarah would be nothing more than a slight inconvenience for Parker, so I slowly set the gun on the floor at my feet. Now, kick it toward me. I did what he said and kicked the gun toward him. Tell me, I said, if you knew I would come for you, why didn't you just shoot me at Annie's apartment? Look at everything you've accomplished while hindered by the memories of a computer nerd. Imagine what you could do with my memories. So, you just want me for my body. I'm sorry, but you're not my type. Gabby told me you developed a sense of humor. I see she was right. I was unconscious. You could have just taken me with you then, I said. It was one thing to walk out with your girlfriend, quite another to carry your unconscious body past several witnesses. It was easier to have you come to us. Just then, the room went dark. Out of what seemed like pure instinct, I reached behind me and pulled the two guns out that I had taken from the security guards. From memory, I fired the gun in my left hand once and the gun in my right hand twice. After a few seconds, the lights came back on and I saw the two men on the floor. I also saw Gabby on the floor. She was clutching her chest and moaning. Parker knelt next to her and said, "Gabby! Oh my God!" He looked at me and yelled, "Call an ambulance!" I put the guns back in my pants and looked around for a phone when Gabby said, "It's too late, but don't worry, my dear. This is not the end of our story." She then took her last breath and died. Parker put his arms around her and started weeping. After a few seconds, he looked up at me with pure rage on his face. He stood up, pointed at me, and yelled, "You killed her, you son of a bitch." He took 2 steps toward me and attempted to punch me in the face, but I squatted down and punched him in the gut just as his punch sailed over my head. He doubled over in pain and fell to the floor with both hands on his stomach. I walked over to Annie, looked at Sarah, and said, "Is she okay?" The doctor moved next to Annie. She checked her eyes, pulse, and breathing and said, "She's been medicated, but she should be okay," she said. "That's good," I said. And while Parker was squirming on the floor, I picked up my gun and put it in its holster. I then picked up the other guns, including the 2 that I took from the guards at the door, and put them all on a table, far from Parker's reach. There was a gurney in the room. The room. I moved it close to Annie and said, "Help me move her onto this." The 2 of us picked her up and put her on the gurney. I then pushed her away from the machine. "What is the drug that they used to put Annie out? Is it in this room somewhere?" I asked. Sarah looked around and found a cabinet with an assortment of bottles. She pulled one out and said, "Here it is." "Good," I said. "I need enough to put him out," and pointed to Parker, who was still on the floor, clutching his stomach. Sarah found a needle and extracted some of the drug. She then handed me the needle. "That should be enough to put him out for a half hour or so," she said. I took the needle and walked over to Parker. I set the needle down and said, "What did Gabby mean when she said it wasn't the end of your story?" Parker laughed and said, "You can kill us, but we will live on." "You mean in General Rafferty?" I said. "And his wife?" He said and laughed again. "Maybe others, too." I picked up the needle and jabbed it in his arm. "Shit," he said. "What is that?" "Just a little something to help you sleep," I said. Before I finished the sentence, he was out. I dragged him close to the machine and asked Sarah, "Can you help me get him up here?" He was heavier than Annie, but we managed to get him up and onto the machine. "What are you going to do?" Sarah asked. "He is going to get a taste of his own medicine," I said. I went to the computer terminal and noticed the program was already running. I saw a big green button at the bottom of the screen that said, "Run." I looked around and found an external device for plugging in hard drives. There was room for 5 hard drives, but only one was plugged in. I pulled it out and saw the word Gabby written with a black marker on it. I set it down, took the hard drive out of my pocket, and plugged it in. I then clicked the run button. The machine came to life. Lights started flashing, and it started making a loud thumping noise as Parker's head slowly moved toward the scanner. Parker stopped moving when his head reached the correct position, but the noise continued. After a minute or two, the platform reversed, and the noise stopped. I looked at Sarah and said, "We don't have much time. Can you wake him?" She looked through the medicine cabinet and found a bottle of something. She extracted some into a needle, held it up, and said, "This should wake him, but there are risks." "We don't have much choice," I said. "Go ahead." She injected the contents of the needle into Parker's arm and then stood back and watched. His eyes opened, and he blinked several times. He looked around and said, "What happened? Where am I? What is this place?" I looked at him and said, "What is your name?" "Bernard Newman," he said. "Who are you?" "Oh my God," Sarah said. "I admit I had doubts, but this is incredible." "What is she talking about?" said the man formerly known as Parker. "I'm sorry," I said. "I would like to break this to you gently, but there is no time. It is 5 years later than you think. After you invented a machine to extract people's memories, you went to work with a man named Scott Parker. He had the money and resources to help you design a machine to reverse the process and implant memories into people. The device worked, but you learned what Parker had in store for it, and you disappeared with the technology. Since Parker already had the memories of Alex, your son, he implanted his memories into another person's body. He hoped that Alex could help find you. To make a long story short, I'm Alex." "That's ridiculous," he said. "You are not Alex. What's going on here?" "Technically, I'm John, but I have Alex's memories," I said. "There's more. Your memories are now in Scott Parker's body. Think about it. The last thing you remember is having your brain scanned." There was a mirror on the desk. I picked it up and showed him his face. "You can freak out later. Right now, I need you to be Scott Parker. You are the boss here." I pointed to the people on the ground. "These people are your employees, and they tried to kill you, but Dr. Carr and I saved you." I pointed at Sarah. "Do you think you can sell it?" He took a deep breath and said, "I'll do what I have to do." I quickly explained to him what happened and told him what to say. It was hard to think of Scott Parker as my dad. I'm sure he was having a hard time with it too, but he didn't show it at that moment. We walked out into the hallway as the two guards were waking up. "What the hell are you two doing?" Dad said. "My own people tried to kill me, and you men are out here napping." One pointed at me and said, "It was him. He was the one who saved me," Dad said. "Your services are no longer needed here," he told them. "Now go home. On the way out, untie the two men downstairs and tell them they are no longer needed either." After they left, Dad leaned against the wall, took a deep breath, and sighed. He said, "This is too much for me to process right now." "We need to check on Annie," I said, and we returned to the room. She was still unconscious. I put her hand in mine, and her eyes slowly fluttered open. She looked at me and said, "I knew you would come for me." We hugged, and I said, "I couldn't bear the thought of Gabriella in your head," I said. Annie tried to sit up. I helped her. She looked around and saw the bodies on the floor, including Gabby. "I can't say she didn't deserve it," she said. She then noticed Parker standing behind me and became angry. "What the hell is he doing here? He should be on the floor with the rest of the trash." "Brace yourself," I said. "Parker is gone. This is Bernie, Alex's dad. In a way, my dad too." "What?" she said. "You put Parker in the machine? That was genius and quite ironic." I turned and said, "Dad, this is Annie, my fiancée." He said, "Annie, I am very pleased to meet you." "Likewise," she said hesitantly. Just then, my phone rang. It was Alex. I answered and said, "We're okay. Thanks for your help." "I'm so relieved," he said. "When the cameras came back on, I saw it was a trap, but it was too late to warn you. After you put your gun down, I feared the worst. I should have bought an earpiece and kept you on the line." "Lesson learned," he said. "Did you turn off the lights?" I asked. "Yes, I couldn't think of anything else. It was a Hail Mary pass." "There is something you should know," I said. "The hard drive we got from Dad's safety deposit box contained his memories from 5 years ago. Those memories are now in Scott Parker's head." "Oh, geez," he said. This just gets weirder and weirder. You should talk to him, I said. I think he could use a familiar voice. I put the phone on speaker and said, "It's Alex." Dad said, "Alex, is that you?" "It's me, Dad. How are you holding up?" "I've had better days," he said. "It is so good to hear your voice." This would be the resent. "It's good to hear from you too, Dad," Alex said. "When I did that brain scan of myself, I never in my wildest dreams thought this could be the result." "John went through what you are going through now," Alex said. "Lean on him. He can help you." "I will," Dad said. "I'll call you when I am more settled." I took the phone off speaker, stepped away, and said, "Alex, you should be safe to go home now. Parker and Gabby are still technically out there, but you should not be a concern for them anymore." "Does Dad know what happened to him yet?" he asked. "Not yet, but I will tell him," I said. "We'll head home in the morning," he said. "Thanks for everything." I hung up and looked at Annie. "We need to explain this to the police." "I can help with that," she said. "Good," I said, "but before you do, I have a few things I want to do." "Dad," I said, "do you think you can get this thing to scan memories?" He went to the computer screen, opened a new menu, clicked a couple of buttons, and said, "It's good to go." "So it will just scan and nothing more, right?" I said. "Don't worry," he said. "I recognize the program. It's set to scan." I removed Dad's hard drive and located one marked Scott. I then connected it to the system. I opened a File Explorer window and formatted the hard drive. I said, "Now we won't see any more copies of Scott Parker." "How many do you think are out there now?" Annie said. "Just one, I hope." I lay on the machine and said, "Okay, Dad, let's do this." He started the machine up, and I was slowly pulled into the device. After several minutes, the machine shut down, and I got off it. I unplugged the hard drive, then found Gabby's hard drive, connected it, and repeated what I did to Parker's hard drive. Annie saw what I was doing and said, "No, I'm not getting in that thing again." "It's perfectly safe. I did it first so you could see." "I don't think so. I will accept if you say no, but it would mean a lot to me if you did this," I said. She thought for a moment and then said, "Okay, I will do it for you, but if I turn into Psycho Bitch, you will have to live with it." Annie got on the machine, and Dad started it up. When it finished, Annie sat up, and I said, "Gabby, is that you?" "Very funny," she said as she hopped off the table. I went to the computer that controlled the machine and set password protection on it. I wanted to dismantle the thing and erase everything related to it, but I thought there might be one more use for it before I destroyed it. I unplugged Annie's hard drive and put both drives in the cabinet under the machine. I asked Sarah to prepare 2 more injections for putting people to sleep. "Who do you want to put to sleep?" she asked. "There are still a couple of pretenders out there," I said. She did what I asked, and I put the 2 syringes on top of the machine, out of sight. This audiobook continues on the next video. For more information on this book and others by this author, please visit charleshuss.com.